The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wraparound porch of former 12 Habersham Street, one of those graceful old homes in Savannah's historic district that tourists photograph but rarely see inside. Mary Smith sat in her wicker rocking chair, the one her late husband Robert had bought her for their 30th anniversary, watching a silver Honda Accord weave erratically into the driveway. Her hands trembled as she set down her sweet tea. She knew that driving pattern. She'd seen it every evening for the past 2 years. James emerged from the car, stumbling slightly as his foot caught the curb. Even from the porch, Mary could see the half-empty bottle of Jack Daniels in his left hand. Her son, her baby boy, now 35 years old with gray threading through his dark hair, squinted up at her with bloodshot eyes. "Mom," he slurred, attempting a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Why are you sitting out here? You waiting for me?" Like a prison guard, Mary thought, but didn't say. Instead, she forced her lips into something resembling warmth. "Just enjoying the weather, sweetheart. Did you have a good day?" James laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that made Mary flinch. "Good day? That's rich, Mom. Real rich." He brushed past her into the house, and Mary caught the familiar scent. Whiskey, cigarettes, and something else. Desperation, maybe, or rage. They smelled the same these days. Mary's gaze drifted to her wrists, where fading yellow-green bruises peeked out from beneath her long sleeves. It was 78 degrees outside. Nobody wore long sleeves in Savannah in September. But Mary Smith had worn long sleeves every day for 2 years. She closed her eyes and let her mind drift back to when everything had been different. 10 years ago, James had been golden. Fresh out of Georgia Tech with a degree in architecture, he'd landed a position at one of Atlanta's most prestigious firms. Mary still remembered the day he'd called her, his voice bursting with pride. "Mom, I did it! I'm designing the new convention center downtown." 7 years ago, he'd married Sarah Mitchell in a ceremony at Forsyth Park. Mary could still see Sarah's radiant smile as she'd walked down the aisle. Could still hear James's voice cracking with emotion as he'd said his vows. "I promise to love you through every season," he'd said, "through every storm." He hadn't known then what storms were coming. 5 years ago, the architecture firm had collapsed during the recession. James had come home that night, not drunk yet, not then, and sat at this very kitchen table, his head in his hands. 200 employees, Mom. All gone. Just gone. 4 years ago, Sarah had lost the baby. They'd been 6 months along, had already painted the nursery yellow, had picked out the name Emma Grace. The doctor said it was stress-induced. James had said nothing at all. He'd just started coming home later and later, the smell of whiskey growing stronger. 3 years ago, Sarah had left. Mary had begged her to stay, had promised James would get help, would change, but Sarah had just shaken her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't watch him destroy himself anymore, Mrs. Smith, and I can't let him destroy me, too." 3 years and 1 month ago, Robert had died. Pancreatic cancer, swift and merciless. His last words to Mary had been, "Take care of our boy. Promise me. He needs you." Mary had promised, and James had moved back home temporarily. A temporary arrangement that had stretched into 2 years and counting. A crash from inside the house jolted Mary from her memories. She hurried inside to find James in the kitchen, staring down at the shattered remains of the casserole dish she'd prepared for dinner. "You made chicken casserole," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Yes, dear. Your favorite. I told you this morning I wanted pot roast." He turned to face her, and Mary's breath caught. His eyes were empty, black holes where her son used to be. "Why don't you ever listen to me?" "James, you didn't tell me about pot roast. You left before breakfast, remember? So now I'm a liar?" His voice rose. "Is that what you're saying? That I'm a liar?" "No, sweetheart, I'm just—" The back of his hand caught her shoulder, sending her stumbling sideways into the counter. Not her face. Never her face where people might see. "Clean it up," James muttered, already heading toward the stairs. "And don't make any noise. I've got a headache." Mary waited until she heard his bedroom door slam before she allowed herself to move. Slowly, carefully, she knelt down and began picking up the pieces of broken glass, each shard a tiny mirror reflecting her fractured life back at her. A piece of chicken, still warm, sat in a puddle of cream sauce. Mary had spent 2 hours making this casserole. She'd used the recipe from Robert's mother, the one James had loved since he was 5 years old. As she cleaned, a memory surfaced, unbidden and unwanted. She was 15 years old, crouched in almost this exact position, cleaning up broken dishes while her father's heavy footsteps retreated upstairs. Her mother had stood in the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing. The next day, her mother had packed their bags and left. Mary had hated her for that. Hated her for breaking up the family, for not trying harder, for not loving Daddy enough to help him through his rough patch. Now, kneeling on her kitchen floor at 68 years old, Mary wondered if her mother had been the bravest person she'd ever known. The next morning, Mary sat in the sunroom with her coffee, staring at her cell phone. She'd typed the message 3 times and deleted it 3 times. "Maggie, I need to talk. Can you come by for tea?" Her thumb hovered over the send button. Margaret Maggie O'Connor had been her best friend since 1985, when they both volunteered for the Savannah Garden Club. 40 years of friendship, of shared secrets and Sunday brunches and quiet confidences. Maggie knew about James's drinking. She'd even seen the bruises once, though Mary had lied and said she'd fallen in the garden. Maggie had looked at her with those sharp judge's eyes. She'd retired from the Chatham County Superior Court 5 years ago and hadn't said a word. But her silence had spoken volumes. Before Mary could send the message, her phone rang. Rachel, her baby sister. "Mary? I'm just checking in. How are you doing?" "I'm fine, sweetie. Just having my morning coffee." "And James?" Rachel's voice was careful, controlled. She was a retired nurse. She knew how to ask questions without seeming to ask. "He's sleeping. Had a long day yesterday." A pause. "Mary, you know I'm here if you need anything. My guest room is always ready. You could come stay with me in Atlanta for a while. Get away from—" "I'm not leaving my home, Rachel." Mary's voice was sharper than she intended. "I'm not abandoning my son. I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant." Mary softened. "I'm sorry. I'm just tired." After she hung up, Mary sat in the quiet sunroom for a long time. Through the window, she could see Mrs. Chen from next door, working in her garden. Normal life, going on as if nothing was wrong. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maggie. "Lunch today? The usual spot? I have something to tell you." Mary typed back. "Yes, 12:30. She almost added, "I have something to tell you too," but her fingers froze. What would she say? That her son was hurting her? That she was afraid in her own home? That every night she went to bed wondering if this would be the night he went too far? No, she couldn't say those things. Saying them out loud would make them real. At precisely 9:00 a.m., as Mary was washing her breakfast dishes, her doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass panel, she could see a familiar silhouette. Detective Robert Bobby Williams stood on her porch, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Smith," he said when she opened the door. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Bobby." Mary managed a smile for her former student. She'd taught him in 2nd grade, back when he'd been a gap-toothed boy who'd struggled with reading but excelled at kindness. Now he was 45, with gray at his temples and the weight of the world in his eyes. "What brings you by?" "Well, ma'am, He shifted his weight. "We got a call last night. Around 8 p.m. One of your neighbors reported raised voices, sounds of things breaking." Mary's smile didn't waver. "Oh, that. James and I were watching a movie. You know how loud those action films can be. I'm sorry we disturbed anyone." Bobby's eyes, kind eyes, sad eyes, met hers. He knew she was lying. They both knew he knew. "Mrs. Smith," he said quietly, "if you ever need help—" "I don't need help, Bobby, but thank you for checking on me. That's very kind." He handed her his card, even though she already had 3 of them in her kitchen drawer. "My cell number's on there. day or night. After he left, Mary stood in the doorway, card in hand, staring at the numbers. She'd memorized them months ago, but memorizing wasn't the same as using. Upstairs, she heard James's alarm go off. He'd be down in 20 minutes, hungover and irritable, expecting breakfast and sympathy. Mary looked at Bobby's card one more time, then tucked it into her pocket. Not today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. But somewhere deep inside her, a tiny seed of something had been planted. It would take a while to grow, but it was there. The smallest beginning of the word enough. The day had been almost peaceful. James had left early to meet with an old colleague about a possible freelance project, the first spark of ambition Mary had seen in him in months. She'd allowed herself to hope. Hope was dangerous, she realized now, sitting at her kitchen table at 10:47 p.m., watching the clock on the microwave blink away the minutes. James had said he'd be home by 7. It was now almost 11, and she'd already received 2 text messages, each more slurred than the last. Meeting went great, Mom. Celebrating. Don't wait up. Imfian. Mary had made fried chicken, the kind James had loved as a boy, her grandmother's recipe that took 3 hours to prepare. She'd set aside 3 pieces for him, wrapped in foil, in the refrigerator. At 11:30, she heard the car. Not in the driveway, on the lawn. She rushed to the window to see James's Honda had somehow mounted the curb and was now parked at a 45-degree angle, tire tracks gouging through her azalea bed. The car door opened. James half fell, half climbed out. Mary met him at the front door, which turned out to be her first mistake of the night. "James, sweetheart, let me help you. Don't sweetheart me." He pushed past her, so forcefully she had to grab the doorframe to keep from falling. "You know what that bastard said to me? You know what Charlie said?" "Who's Charlie?" "Charlie, my old boss. The one I thought—" James laughed, wild and broken. "He said the project went to someone else. Said he just wanted to let me down easy. Bought me drinks to soften the blow like I'm some kind of charity case." He stumbled into the kitchen, saw the wrapped chicken in the refrigerator, and his face twisted with rage. "You made chicken. Again. Always chicken. Chicken and casseroles and all your grandmother's old lady food, like that's going to fix anything." "I can make you something else." "I don't want something else." His arms swept across the counter, sending her ceramic canister set flying. Flour exploded across the floor like snow. "I want my life back. I want my wife back. I want my father back. I want—" His voice broke, and for just a moment Mary saw her son again, saw the frightened, grieving boy underneath all that rage and alcohol. "James," she whispered, stepping toward him. "Let me help you. Please, let me—" "You can't help me." He turned, and his elbow caught the china cabinet. Her wedding china, the rose pattern Robert had saved for 3 months to buy, crashed to the floor in an explosion of porcelain and shattered memory. "No!" Mary cried out before she could stop herself. That was my—" "Your what?" James wheeled on her. "Your precious dishes? Your precious things? That's what you care about? Things? I care about you!" The words burst out of her. "I care about you so much She never finished the sentence. James's fist, and it was his fist this time, not his hand, not an accidental elbow, connected with her cheekbone. The force of it sent her backward into the china cabinet, and she felt something in her back give way as she crashed into the sharp corner. She slid to the floor, landing on broken china, feeling pieces embed themselves in her palms as she tried to catch herself. Above her, James stood swaying, staring at his own hand as if it belonged to someone else. "Mom," he whispered. "I didn't—" But he didn't finish. He turned and walked up the stairs, and she heard his bedroom door close with a decisive click. Mary sat among the ruins for a long time. Blood dripped from her cheek onto the white flour. Her hands were stuck with tiny pieces of china. Her back throbbed where she'd hit the cabinet corner. She could taste blood in her mouth. Slowly, so slowly, she pulled herself to her feet, using the counter edge for support. Each movement sent a wave of pain through her body. She limped to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. The right side of her face was already swelling, a bloom of purple spreading from her cheekbone to her eye. Her gray hair had come loose from its bun and hung around her face in wild tangles. Blood trickled from a split in her lower lip. She looked like a stranger. No, she looked like her mother. The memory came flooding back with cruel clarity. Her mother at the bathroom sink, age 35, cleaning blood from her mouth after one of Daddy's rough nights. Mary had been 15, standing in the doorway, horrified and ashamed in equal measure. 2 weeks later, her mother had packed their bags and walked out. She'd said only, "Some storms you can't weather. Some storms will drown you if you try." Mary was 68 years old. She had weathered so many storms: poverty, prejudice, her husband's death, her son's descent. She had been strong. She had been patient. She had been loving. She had been wrong. The woman in the mirror wasn't her mother, wasn't her younger self. She was Mary Smith, and she was done drowning. She pulled out her phone and took pictures. 4 photos: her face from the front, her face from the side, her bloody palms, the bruises forming on her forearms where she'd tried to catch herself. Then she sat down at her kitchen table, opened her laptop, and began to type. The email to Maggie was short. "I need your help. It's time." She didn't expect a response until morning, but within 3 minutes, her phone rang. "Mary," Maggie's voice was steady, calm, the voice of someone who had heard 1,000 stories of pain in her courtroom. "Tell me everything." And for the first time in 2 years, Mary Smith did. At 4:00 a.m., while James snored upstairs, Mary Smith stood in her kitchen and began to bake. Not just any baking. This was resurrection through flour and butter, redemption through rising dough. Her face throbbed. Her hands ached. Every movement sent pain radiating through her bruised ribs. But Mary mixed and kneaded and rolled with the fierce determination of a woman who had finally found her purpose. Buttermilk biscuits, the kind that took 3 hours because you had to let the dough rest between foldings. James's favorite since he was 6 years old, when he'd stand on a stool beside her and sneak bits of raw dough when he thought she wasn't looking. Sausage gravy, thick and peppery, the recipe she'd learned from Robert's grandmother. Fried chicken, yes, more fried chicken, but this time the Sunday dinner kind, with the special coating that took 12 different spices. Pecan pie, because James had once told Sarah it tasted like home and heaven mixed together. Fresh squeezed orange juice, real butter, Georgia peaches sliced thin as paper. A feast, a celebration, the last breakfast. At 5:30 a.m., with the kitchen smelling like every good morning of James's childhood, Mary picked up her phone. Call 1, Maggie. "It's time," Mary said when Maggie answered, her friend's voice alert despite the early hour. "I need you at my house at 9:00 a.m. "I'll be there at 8:45, Maggie replied. "Mary, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Mary's voice didn't shake. "Maggie, I need you to bring your authority, not as my friend, as Judge O'Connor." A pause. Then, "I understand. Mary, I'm proud of you." After Mary hung up, she allowed herself one moment of tears. Then she wiped her eyes and made the second call. Call 2, Detective Bobby Williams. "Mrs. Smith?" Bobby's voice was thick with sleep and concern. "Is everything— Bobby, I need you to come to my house at 9:00 a.m. this morning. I'm ready to make a formal complaint." She took a breath. "Against my son." Silence. Then, "I'll be there." "And Mrs. Smith, thank you for trusting me. Bobby, bring another officer with you. A woman, if possible. And bring everything you need to arrest someone." She heard him exhale slowly. "Yes, ma'am. We'll handle this right. Call 3, Rachel." Her sister answered on the first ring. "Mary, what's wrong? It's not even 6. "Nothing's wrong, Rachel. Everything's finally right." Mary looked around her kitchen, at the feast she'd prepared, at the morning light just beginning to filter through the curtains. "I need you to come to Savannah this morning. Be here by 8:45. And Rachel, wear something nice. Today is important." "Mary, you're scaring me." "What?" "I'm saving my life. Mary said simply. "And maybe James is too. Will you come? I'm already getting dressed." At 7:00 a.m., Mary stood in front of her bedroom mirror. The swelling on her face had darkened overnight to a spectacular purple-black. She could have covered it with makeup. She had plenty of practice. But this morning, she chose truth over concealment. She did her hair in the elegant twist Robert had loved, put on her navy dress with the white collar, the one she wore to church on Easter, her pearl earrings, a touch of lipstick on her uninjured lip. She looked like herself again, not the cowering woman of yesterday, not the victim, just Mary Smith, retired second-grade teacher, preparing for the most important lesson she'd ever teach. At 8:00 a.m., she set the table, not the everyday dishes, the good china, what was left of it after last night. She used her grandmother's lace tablecloth, the one she'd been saving for special occasions that never seemed to come, white candles in silver holders, a vase of fresh roses from the garden, the family photo from James's 10th birthday party, all three of them laughing, Robert's arm around her shoulder, James holding up a model airplane they'd built together. She placed that photo in the center of the table, like a benediction, or a goodbye. At 8:45 a.m., the first guest arrived. Rachel burst through the front door, took one look at Mary's face, and nearly collapsed. "Oh my God! Mary! Mary, we need to get you to a hospital." "I've already documented everything," Mary said calmly, leading her sister to the kitchen. "The photos are uploaded to the cloud. Maggie has copies. The hospital can wait. This can't." Rachel stared at the laden table, at the feast laid out like a sacred offering. "What is this?" "Justice," Mary said, "and love. Sometimes they're the same thing." At 8:50 a.m., Maggie arrived, her silver hair pulled back, wearing a charcoal suit that practically radiated authority. She took Mary's hands, carefully, mindful of the cuts, and simply nodded. "You're the bravest woman I've ever known," Maggie said. "I'm the most terrified woman you've ever known," Mary corrected. "But I'm doing it anyway." At 8:58 a.m., Bobby Williams arrived with Officer Linda Hayes, a stocky woman with kind eyes and 20 years on the force. They stood in the foyer, taking in the scene, the beautiful table, the bruised woman in the Easter dress, the judge and the sister standing like sentinels. "Mrs. Smith," Linda said softly, "can you walk me through what happened last night?" "Soon," Mary promised. "When everyone is here. I only want to tell this story once." At 9:00 a.m. exactly, the floorboards above them creaked. James was awake. James came down the stairs slowly, one hand on the railing, the other pressed to his temple. Classic hangover posture. Mary knew it by heart. He was halfway to this kitchen before he registered the smell. Homemade breakfast, the kind she used to make every Sunday when he was young, before the world broke him into pieces. He rounded the corner and froze. The table, the food, the candles. His mother standing there in her best dress, face bruised like a prize fighter, but standing straight, shoulders back, looking at him with an expression he'd never seen before. "Mom," his voice cracked. What is all this?" "Good morning, James. I made breakfast." Mary's voice was steady, calm. "Your favorites. Please, sit down." James's gaze drifted past her to Rachel, who stood near the sink, arms crossed, eyes red from crying. Then to Maggie, sitting at the far end of the table with the bearing of someone presiding over something official. He didn't see Bobby and Linda yet. They were standing in the hallway, just out of sight. "Why is everyone here?" Confusion clouded James's hungover face. "Did I forget something? Is it someone's birthday?" "Sit down, James," Mary repeated. He sat, stared at the biscuits, the gravy, the chicken, reached for a piece, then stopped, looking at his mother's face for the first time. Really looking. "Mom, what happened to your—" "You did," Mary said simply. The words hung in the air like smoke. James's face went white. His hand, halfway to the biscuit, began to shake. I don't remember. I know you don't." Mary pulled out her phone, opened the photos, and placed it on the table in front of him. But this is what you left behind. James stared at the images, his mother's battered face, her bloody hands, the destruction in the kitchen. His breathing quickened. Oh, God, Mom, I didn't mean to. You meant to. Mary's voice was gentle but implacable. You meant every punch, every push, every word. And last night, you finally did what I've been afraid you'd do for 2 years. You used your fist instead of your hand. But I was drunk. I wasn't. You were drunk, Mary agreed. And you'll be drunk again. And again. Until something stops you. Until someone stops you. James pushed back from the table, suddenly alert, eyes darting to Rachel, to Maggie, beginning to understand. What is this? What's happening? The doorbell rang. Not rang, it was already open. Bobby Williams and Linda Hayes stepped into view. James shot to his feet. No, Mom, you didn't. I did. Mary remained seated, hands folded on the table. Detective Williams, Officer Hayes, thank you for coming. I'd like to file a formal complaint of domestic violence against my son, James Robert Smith. You can't do this! James's voice rose to a shout. I'm your son. You're supposed to love me, to forgive me. I do love you, Mary said, and her voice broke for the first time. I love you more than my own life, James. That's why I'm doing this. By having me arrested? By destroying my life? Your life was already destroyed. Maggie spoke for the first time, her judge's voice cutting through James's panic. You destroyed it yourself, one drink at a time. Your mother is trying to save what's left. James turned on her. You don't know anything about it. You don't know what I've lost. I know what you're about to lose. Maggie stood, and even in civilian clothes, she radiated courtroom authority. Your freedom, your mother, and quite possibly, if you'd continued on this path, your life. Because eventually, James, you would have killed her. And then where would you be? I would never. You already did, Linda Hayes said quietly, moving to stand beside Bobby. Look at her face, James. Look at what you did. This isn't a fender bender. This isn't a regrettable mistake. This is aggravated assault and battery. In the state of Georgia, that's a felony. James's knees buckled. He caught himself on the back of the chair, staring at his mother. Please don't do this. I'll go to rehab. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't. You've said that before, Mary said softly. 12 times in 2 years, James. 12 promises. 12 lies. They weren't lies. I meant them. You just didn't follow through. Mary stood now, walked slowly to her son. Up close, she could see the broken blood vessels in his eyes. The premature aging alcohol had carved into his face. Do you know what I promised your father before he died? I promised to take care of you. And I thought that meant protecting you from consequences. I thought it meant keeping your secrets, covering your bruises with my body. She reached up. He flinched, actually flinched from her touch, and gently cupped his face with her injured hand. I was wrong. Taking care of you means making you face what you've become. It means loving you enough to let you fall. And maybe, if God is merciful, you'll learn to stand up on your own. Tears streamed down James's face. Mom, please. Bobby stepped forward, handcuffs in hand. James Robert Smith, you're under arrest for aggravated assault and battery, domestic violence in the 1st degree. You have the right to remain silent. No! James tried to pull away, but Bobby's grip was firm. Mom! Mom! Mary stood watching as the handcuffs clicked shut around her son's wrists. The same wrists that had once been chubby toddler wrists, reaching up for her to pick him up. The same wrists that had learned to write in cursive, to throw a baseball, to hold his wife's hand at the altar. The same wrists that had struck her down last night. I love you, she said as Bobby began leading him toward the door. I love you more than you'll ever know. But I love myself too. And I finally understand that both things can be true. James was crying openly now, struggling against the handcuffs. You're abandoning me, just like Sarah did, just like Dad did when he died. Everyone leaves me. Mary felt something crack inside her chest. Not her ribs this time, but something deeper. The part of her that had always given in, always forgiven, always smoothed things over. "No, James," she said, her voice carrying over his sobs. "I'm not leaving you. I'm showing you the door to the rest of your life. Whether you walk through it or not, that's up to you." As Bobby led James outside, past the beautiful table with its untouched feast, past the family photo of happier times, past the threshold of the only home James had ever known, the morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the destruction in the dishes, the brokenness and the biscuits. Mary stood in that light, Rachel's arm around her shoulders, Maggie's hand gripping hers, and watched her son disappear into the police car. For the first time in 2 years, she took a full breath, without fear. The police car pulled away at 9:47 a.m. By 10:15, Mary's kitchen was full again, but this time with different sounds. Not rage and breaking things, but quiet tears and careful hands. Linda Hayes had stayed behind to take Mary's official statement. She sat across from Mary at the breakfast table, the breakfast no one had eaten, and documented everything with professional compassion. "How long has this been going on, Mrs. Smith?" 2 years, since his father died, but it got worse in the past 6 months. "Did you seek medical attention for any of the previous incidents?" Mary shook her head. "I told people I was clumsy, that I fell, that I bruised easily because of my age." Linda looked up from her notepad. "Mrs. Smith, I want you to know something. What you did today, most people never find that courage. My own mother," she paused, clearing her throat. "She never pressed charges. My father drank himself to death, and she drank her pain away with him. You just saved your son's life." "It doesn't feel like saving him," Mary whispered. "It feels like destroying him." "Sometimes," Linda said gently, "those are the same thing." By noon, the house was quiet again. Rachel had insisted Mary come back to Atlanta with her, at least for a few days. Maggie had already made calls to her lawyer friends, setting up legal representation for Mary. "Because James will need a lawyer, but so will you," she'd said. Mary walked through her house one last time before leaving. In the kitchen, the feast sat congealing on the table. All that work, all that love baked into biscuits and poured into gravy, uneaten. She thought of all the meals she'd made for James over the years. Thousands of breakfasts, lunches, dinners. Feeding him, nourishing him, loving him through food because that was the language she spoke best. But you couldn't feed someone back to wholeness. You couldn't make enough chicken to cure a broken soul. She picked up the family photo from the center of the table. Robert smiled up at her, his arm around 10-year-old James, both of them so happy, so unaware of the storms coming. "I kept my promise," she whispered to Robert's image. "I took care of our boy, just not the way either of us expected." Rachel appeared in the doorway. "Ready?" Mary looked around one more time, at the beautiful table, the untouched feast, the morning light streaming through windows that had witnessed so much pain. "Yes," she said. "I'm ready." But as she walked toward the door, something made her stop. She went back, picked up one of the buttermilk biscuits, still warm, and wrapped it carefully in a napkin. "For later," she told Rachel, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. For later, for hope, for the possibility that someday, somehow, there might be another breakfast. One where love didn't wear bruises, where family didn't mean fear, where both of them had learned to feed their own souls first. Week 1, the silence. Rachel's guest room in Atlanta was painted a soothing sage green, with white curtains that filtered the morning light into something soft and forgiving. Mary sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. They'd healed. The cuts from the broken china had scabbed over, would eventually become small white scars barely visible against her age-spotted skin. But every time she looked at them, she saw James's face as the handcuffs clicked shut. Her phone buzzed. Another news alert. Savannah woman 68 presses charges against son in domestic violence case. The story had gone local, then regional. The Savannah Morning News had run it on page 3. Someone had leaked her name, her address, her story. The comments section was a war zone. Good for her. Takes courage to stand up to family abuse. What kind of mother sends her own son to jail? Heartless. My grandmother never reported my uncle and he killed her. This woman saved lives. She should be ashamed. Family sticks together through hard times. Mary closed the browser. Rachel found her an hour later, still sitting in the same position, phone dark in her lap. You need to eat, Rachel said gently. I'm not hungry. Mary, you haven't eaten in 2 days. I keep thinking about that breakfast. Mary's voice was hollow. All that food, all that work. Nobody ate a single bite. Rachel sat beside her, took her sister's hand. That breakfast wasn't about the food, was it? No. Mary finally looked at her. It was about, I don't know, saying goodbye, maybe, to the mother I used to be, the one who thought love meant sacrifice until there was nothing left. And now? Now I don't know who I am. Week 2. The letter. It arrived in a county jail envelope. Mary's name written in James's distinctive architectural lettering. Precise, controlled, beautiful even on prison stationery. Mary held it for 3 hours before opening it. Rachel sat across from her at the kitchen table. Want me to read it first? No, I need to do this. She unfolded the single page. James's handwriting, but the words felt like poison seeping through paper. Mother, I hope you're satisfied. I hope sending your own son to jail makes you feel powerful. Do you know what it's like in here? Do you care? You took everything from me, my dignity, my freedom, the last shred of belief I had that someone in this world actually loved me. Sarah left me. Dad died and left me. And now you've left me in the cruelest way possible, by pretending it's for my own good. You're not a mother. You're a coward who couldn't handle her own son's pain, so you handed me over to the system like I'm some kind of criminal. I'll never forgive you for this. Never. James Mary read it twice. On the second reading, the words started to blur, then her hands started to shake. Then something in her chest collapsed inward like a demolished building. Mary? Mary, what does it... But Mary couldn't answer. The room spun. Her breath wouldn't come. She felt Rachel's arms around her, heard her sister shouting something, but the words were underwater. The ambulance arrived 14 minutes later. Week 3, Dr. Patricia Nelson. Your blood pressure was 190/110, Dr. Nelson said, reviewing Mary's chart. She was a petite black woman in her 50s, with close-cropped silver hair and eyes that had witnessed countless stories of survival. The ER doctor referred you to me because he recognized what he was seeing. This wasn't just a panic attack, Mrs. Smith. This was trauma. They sat in Dr. Nelson's office on Peachtree Street, afternoon light slanting through blinds, creating bars of shadow on the carpet. Appropriate, Mary thought distantly. I put my son in jail, Mary said, and now he hates me. Maybe I am a coward. Maybe I... Stop. Dr. Nelson's voice was firm but kind. Let me tell you what I see. I see a woman who endured 2 years of escalating violence. A woman who, at 68 years old, found the strength to break a cycle that probably goes back generations. A woman who loved her son enough to let him face consequences instead of enabling his destruction. But his letter is written by an addict in withdrawal, a man in pain, lashing out at the person who held up a mirror. Dr. Nelson leaned forward. Mary, can I ask you something? When you were growing up, did anyone in your family struggle with violence? Mary's breath caught. The memory came flooding back, not slowly, not gently, but like a dam breaking. Twist 3, the grandmother's choice. My father, Mary heard herself say. My father drank, and when he drank, he... She was 15 again, crouched in the hallway, listening to her mother cry in the kitchen, watching her father's shadow loom large against the wall, hearing the sound of a hand meeting flesh. My mother left him, Mary continued, the words tumbling out now. I was 15. She packed our bags in the middle of the night, took me and Rachel, and we never went back. I hated her for it. Hated her for years. Why? Because she broke up our family. Because she didn't try harder. Because... Mary stopped, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Because I thought love meant staying, no matter what. I thought leaving was the cowardly choice. And now? Mary looked at Dr. Nelson, tears streaming down her face. Now I think my mother was the bravest person I've ever known, and I've spent 50 years trying to undo what she taught me. I married a good man, thank God. But when James started down my father's path, I didn't see it, or I didn't want to see it. You saw it, Dr. Nelson said gently. You just thought you could love him back to wholeness. But Mary, you can't. You never could. The only person who can save James is James. Month 2, the support group, the Savannah Domestic Violence Support Group, met every Thursday at 7 p.m. in the basement of St. John's Episcopal Church. Mary had driven 2 hours from Atlanta to attend, her hands gripping the steering wheel the entire way. 6 women sat in a circle of folding chairs, ages ranging from 23 to 72. Races, backgrounds, stories all different. But the eyes were all the same. The facilitator, Monica, invited Mary to share. I'm Mary. I'm 68. I had my son arrested for beating me. The words came easier now, after 6 weeks of therapy. And the hardest part is, I still love him. I still want to save him, even though I know I can't. A woman across the circle, Mrs. Patricia Anderson, 72, with careful makeup that didn't quite hide the fading bruises, leaned forward. I understand that feeling. My son, he's hit me 4 times in the past year, the last time I passed out. But I didn't call the police. Why not? Mary asked, though she knew the answer. Because he's my baby. Because his father left us when he was 3 and I'm all he has. Because... Mrs. Anderson's voice broke. Because what kind of mother am I if I give up on my own child? Mary reached across the circle, took the older woman's hand. The kind who survives, the kind who chooses life. But Mrs. Anderson just shook her head, pulled away, and left early. Mary never saw her again. 6 weeks later, Rachel called with the news. Patricia Anderson had died from head trauma after her son pushed her down the stairs. He claimed it was an accident. The police weren't sure. Mary attended the funeral, stood at the back, watched Mrs. Anderson's son cry over the casket, genuine grief and rage warring on his face. And Mary understood. She could have been in that casket, would have been, eventually, if she'd continued choosing James's comfort over her own survival. Month 4, the second letter. This letter was different. Thinner paper, shakier handwriting. And it started with 2 words Mary had been waiting to hear. I'm sorry. Mom, I'm writing this after my 3rd AA meeting. They make us write letters, not to send, just to process. But I think I need to send this one. I'm sorry for what I wrote before. I was angry. Actually, I'm still angry, but I'm starting to understand that I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at myself, at Dad for dying, at Sarah for leaving, at the universe for taking everything I thought I deserved. The counselor here asked me yesterday, "What did your mother do wrong?" And I couldn't answer, because you didn't do anything wrong, Mom. You made breakfast. You cleaned my messes. You loved me even when I was unlovable. What you did right was stopping me before I killed you. Because I would have, Mom. Maybe not that night, maybe not the next, but eventually. The rage in me was bottomless. I'm working on finding the bottom now. It's dark down here, but at least I'm looking. James Mary read the letter sitting in Dr. Nelson's office. When she finished, she looked up. He's starting to understand, Dr. Nelson said. Is it enough? For now, it's a beginning. The Chatham County Superior Courthouse stood imposing on Montgomery Street, its white columns a reminder of both justice and all the times justice had failed. Mary sat in the gallery, Maggie on one side, Rachel on the other. She'd driven back to Savannah for this, James's sentencing hearing. James stood before Judge William Crawford in an orange jumpsuit, his hair cut short, his face thinner, but somehow more present than she'd seen it in years. When he turned to face the gallery, his eyes found hers immediately. She'd prepared herself to see hatred, blame, the empty rage of 6 months ago. Instead, she saw something that broke her heart in a completely different way. Shame. "James Robert Smith," Judge Crawford intoned. "You've pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and battery, domestic violence in the first degree. Do you have anything to say before I pass sentence?" James turned back to the judge. "Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to address the court and my mother." He pulled out a piece of paper, his hands shaking. "Mom, I know you're here. I can feel you there, the way I always could when I was a kid, and you'd watch me at baseball games." His voice cracked. "I want to say I'm sorry, but those words aren't big enough for what I did. I terrorized you. I hurt you. I made you afraid in your own home for 2 years." Mary's hands clenched in her lap. "The man who did that wasn't me. Except he was me. He was the worst parts of me, the parts I fed with alcohol and rage and self-pity instead of starving them out. And you?" He looked over his shoulder, tears streaming openly now. "You did what I couldn't do. You starved him. You said no more. And that's the only reason I'm standing here today instead of standing over your grave." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Mary's quiet sobbing. Judge Crawford sentenced James to 18 months in prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation, mandatory participation in substance abuse treatment, and anger management counseling. As the bailiff led James away, he looked back one more time, mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Month 12, the letters continue. James wrote every week now. The letters got longer, more reflective. Week 32. "I'm reading again, Mom. Remember how I used to love Steinbeck? I'm working through East of Eden. There's this line, 'And now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good.' I think I'm learning what that means." Week 38. "I got a job in the prison library. It doesn't pay much, but I'm helping guys study for their GED. One of them said I was a good teacher. I thought about how you taught 2nd grade for 30 years. Maybe I got something from you after all." Week 45. "The counselor asked us to write a timeline of our violence. When it started, what fed it, what we told ourselves to justify it. Mom, my timeline went back further than I thought. I was angry when Sarah left, angrier when Dad died. But the real anger started when I lost my job, when I lost my sense of purpose. I took all that rage and poured it onto the person who loved me most. I see that now." Mary kept every letter in a box in Rachel's guest room. She didn't respond to most of them. Dr. Nelson had advised her to maintain boundaries, to let James do his work without needing her validation. But on the 1-year anniversary of his arrest, she wrote back, "James, I read every letter. I'm proud of the work you're doing. But I need you to know something. I'm not coming back to Savannah while you're on probation. I'm not letting you live with me again. Our relationship, whatever it becomes, will be different from what it was. You asked me once why I did this. Here's the truth. Because I finally loved myself as much as I loved you. And I realized that true love, the kind that actually saves people, sometimes has to be hard, has to say no, has to let people fall so they can learn to stand. I forgive you, James, but more importantly, I hope someday you forgive yourself. With love, Mom." Month 18. Release day. Mary didn't go to the prison on the day James was released. That was part of their agreement, worked out through letters and mediated phone calls. Instead, James went directly to a halfway house in Savannah's Baldwin Park neighborhood. He got a job at a small architecture firm, entry-level, nothing like his old position, but real work with real meaning. He attended AAA meetings every Tuesday and Thursday, saw his court-appointed therapist every Wednesday, checked in with his probation officer every Friday, and once a month he wrote to his mother, not asking for anything, just reporting, proving, rebuilding trust, one paragraph at a time. Spring in Savannah arrived like a promise kept. The azaleas in Forsyth Park blazed pink and white, the fountains sparkled in afternoon sun, and tourists took photos of oak trees that had witnessed 200 years of human drama. Mary sat on a bench near the fountain, her hands folded in her lap. She'd driven down from Atlanta that morning, Rachel offering to come with her, but Mary had declined. "This is something I need to do alone," she'd said. At 3:00 p.m. exactly, James appeared at the park entrance. He looked different. Not just thinner, though he was. Not just more present, though he was that too. He looked like someone who'd gone to war and come back changed. Older, wounded, but somehow more solid. More real. He saw her and stopped. 50 feet separated them. 2 years of pain. 2 years of healing. An entire lifetime of complicated love. Mary stood. James walked toward her slowly, giving her time to change her mind, to leave, to decide she couldn't do this after all. She stayed. When he reached her, they stood for a moment, just looking. 2 people who'd loved each other and hurt each other and somehow survived both. "Hi, Mom," James said softly. "Hi, sweetheart." They sat down on the bench, maintaining careful space between them, not touching yet. Maybe not for a while. "How are you?" Mary asked. "Sober, employed, in therapy." A small smile. "One day at a time, like they say." Good. Silence. Not awkward, but full. Heavy with everything unsaid. Everything that couldn't be said in words. "I brought you something," James said finally. He pulled out a rolled paper from his jacket. Old-school drafting paper. The kind architects used before everything went digital. Mary unrolled it carefully. It was a house. Not a grand mansion, but a small cottage with a wide porch and a garden space. Every detail rendered in precise, loving lines. In the corner, in James's architectural lettering, "For Mom, someday." "I'm not ready to build it yet," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm working toward it. A place for you. A place with no bad memories. Just windows that let in light and a porch where you can drink your sweet tea and not be afraid." Mary traced the lines of the drawing, her fingers finding the careful detail he'd put into every window, every shingle, every flower in the planned garden. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "You deserve beautiful things, Mom. You always did. I couldn't see that through my own ugliness." Mary looked at her son, this man she'd carried in her body, raised through every childhood illness and school play and heartbreak, this man who'd almost killed her and might have killed himself if she hadn't loved him enough to let him fall. "James, I need you to understand something." She folded the drawing carefully, held it like the gift it was. "I forgive you. I've forgiven you. But we can't go back to the way things were. I know. I won't live with you again. Not now. Maybe not ever. I know that too. And if you drink again, if you show any sign of that rage again, I'm gone. No second chances. No more last chances." James nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I understand, and Mom, I don't want you to give me another chance. I don't deserve it. All I want is this. To sit with you once in a while. To show you I'm doing the work. To be able to look at you without seeing the monster I became." Mary reached out then, slowly, giving him time to see it coming, and took his hand. The hand that had struck her. The hand that had also held hers when he was learning to walk. The hand that was still her son's hand, for better or worse. "You're not a monster, James. You were drowning, and you pulled me under with you. But we both made it to shore. Separately, maybe, but we made it." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, watching the fountain spray its eternal arc of water into the air, falling and rising, like the rhythm of life itself. "Can I ask you something?" James said finally. "Anything. That breakfast, the one you made that morning, did you eat any of it?" Mary smiled despite herself. "Not a bite." "Me neither." He laughed softly, sadly. "All that food, all that love baked into biscuits. Maybe next time, Mary said and surprised herself by meaning it. Maybe someday we can have breakfast again. Not at my house or yours, but somewhere neutral. Somewhere new. I'd like that, James said. When you're ready, however long that takes. However long it takes, Mary agreed. As the sun lowered in the sky, turning the Spanish moss golden and casting long shadows across the park, Mary thought about all the breakfasts she'd made over the years. All the meals meant to say I love you in the only language she knew. But maybe the real love wasn't in the feeding. Maybe it was in the fasting, in saying no more when every instinct screamed to say yes, one more time. Maybe love was teaching someone to feed themselves. I should go, James said, standing reluctantly. I have an AA meeting at 6. Good. Mary stood too. James, I'm proud of you, not for who you were, for who you're becoming. He opened his arms, tentatively, a question, not a demand, and Mary stepped into them. The hug was brief, careful, full of all the broken pieces still healing. But it was real. It was honest. It was a beginning. As James walked away across the park, Mary sat back down on the bench and pulled out the drawing of the house he'd designed for her. She studied every line, every detail, every dream rendered in graphite. Someday, he'd written. Not today, maybe not for years, but someday. And for the first time in 3 years, Mary Smith believed in someday again. She pulled out her phone and texted Rachel, I'm okay. We're okay. See you tonight. Then she sat in the fading light of a Savannah spring, watching strangers and tourists and families pass by, all of them carrying their own storms, their own survivors, their own hard-won shores. And Mary smiled. 2 years later, the package arrived on a Tuesday. Mary almost didn't recognize James's handwriting on the label. It had gotten steadier, more confident. Inside was a scale model of the house from the drawing, beautifully crafted, each tiny shingle in place, each miniature window catching the light. And a note, Mom, I got a promotion. Started teaching a class at the community college. Introduction to Architecture. One of my students asked me what inspired me to design. I told her about a woman who taught me the most important lesson, that you build a life the same way you build a house. One choice at a time. One boundary at a time. One day at a time. I'm not ready to build your house yet, but I'm getting there. Happy Mother's Day. Love, James. Mary placed the model on her mantel in Atlanta, where morning light would hit it just right. And every time she looked at it, she thought about breakfasts, eaten and uneaten, about love that destroys and love that saves, about the fine line between the two. And she thought, this is what it means to be a mother. Not to carry your child forever, but to teach them to walk on their own, even when it breaks your heart. Especially then. Outside, spring was turning to summer. The azaleas had faded, but new flowers were blooming. Everything was growing toward the light.